Alright, welcome back. So in this video, let's explore what are the factors on the determinants that causes changes in overall demand. And this is a bit different from the previous two examples we've covered, because in the previous two examples, we've only covered how quantity demanded changes as a response, as an effect to a change in price. But this time, we will then explore what are some of the factors that cause overall demand at any point along the demand curves to change. So we can say that overall demand, which basically means the entire demand curve, changes as a result of 6 non-price determinants. This may sound a bit technical, so maybe let's explore what the 6 non-price determinants are, and then weave this in to what we currently know about demand. So the first one is changes in taste and preferences. To illustrate this, let's use cake as an example. So imagine you want a piece of cake, right? And many of your friends are very similar to you. Let's say all of you want chocolate cake. Suddenly, there is some cultural shift. Maybe there's some TikTok trend that causes the popularity of strawberry cake to increase. And because the popularity of strawberry cake increases, now the popularity of chocolate cake decreases. There is a difference, or rather a decrease, in taste and preferences for chocolate cake. As a result, the overall demand of chocolate cake falls from D1, in this case, to D2. And if you think about it, this overall change in taste and preferences doesn't just affect slices of cake selling for a particular price. It doesn't only affect cakes selling at $10 per slice. It affects the demand for chocolate cake regardless of whichever shop is selling chocolate cake at whatever prices, right? And as a result, when there is a change in taste and preferences for a particular good, the overall demand changes regardless of price. So, to put it simply, changes in taste and preferences results in a change in overall demand. And this change in overall demand can be either a positive change, where overall demand increases, or a negative change, where overall demand falls. So taste and preferences is the first non-price determinant. Another non-price determinant we can consider is the price of substitute goods. So for example, or before that, what exactly refers to substitute goods? Substitute goods are basically competing goods for that same category. So for example, what is a substitute good for cake? It can be another snack, something like chocolates, right? Because if you eat cake or if you eat chocolate, you will still get some kind of benefit regardless, right? Both are snacks, both make you feel happy, both taste delicious. So these two goods are substitute goods. So now imagine if the price of substitute goods falls. So in this example, imagine if the price of chocolates fall and the price of cake stays the same. Imagine if you are wanting to save money, but if you still want some kind of, sugary benefit, you may then proceed to go and buy chocolates, more chocolates instead of cake. And so what happens to the overall demand for cake? It would fall. So that is the second non-price determinant, which is prices of substitute goods. The third non-price determinant is prices of complementary goods. So you may then be asking yourself, what is a complementary good? Well, a complementary good is as the name suggests, a partner, a complement to the original good that you're consuming. So again, using the example of cake, one very simple complementary good I can think of would maybe be ice cream. Because for example, most people eat cakes with ice cream together, right? So this time, imagine if the overall demand for, or rather the overall price of ice cream falls, more people would then buy cake because most people usually eat cake with ice cream. If ice cream is cheaper, I need to buy more cake to complement my enjoyment of ice cream. And that basically refers to complementary goods and how the fall in price of complementary goods increases the overall demand of the complementary good. So for example, the fall in price of ice cream will lead to more people, demanding a higher quantity of ice cream. And because cake is a complementary good, this also similarly results in an increase in overall demand of cake. So that is the idea here. Next, let's move on to the fourth non-price determinant, which is the number of consumers. This is quite simple. So for example, maybe 50 years ago, cake wasn't really a very big thing. And today, cake is more popular than it was back then. So the market size of cake, the number of consumers who want to buy cake increases, right? And similarly, if more people want to buy cake, the overall demand of cake increases because people are now more willing and able to purchase cake, regardless of price points at which the cake is being sold at any shop. So that simply explains how number of consumers is a non-price determinant too. Now, the final non-price determinant is what I would call income, and income in the context of two types of goods. So the first type of good will be a normal good, and the second type of good will be an inferior good. You can think of these two goods as categories for many, many types of goods. Let's talk about inferior goods as a simpler example. So inferior goods are basically goods that you consume less of when your income increases. One very simple example I can think of would be supermarket brands. So for example, if you go to FairPrice in Singapore, or if you go to Tesco in the UK, you would see some goods like baked beans, for example, or bread, that are made by either Tesco with the Tesco branding or made by some other third-party brand that is not owned by the supermarket, right? The good with the supermarket's branding could potentially be the inferior good. Because imagine, as your income increases, you would want something that is, more premium, right? And for some reason, when we go to a supermarket, we think of the goods that are not owned by the supermarket, not supermarket branded, as the ones that are more premium. So in this case, if I go to Tesco and if my income is increasing, I would probably buy goods from a non-Tesco brand. And so the Tesco brand is the inferior good in this context. Because as my income increases, the overall demand I have for inferior goods like the supermarket home labeled brand will fall. Normal goods, on the other hand, are basically the opposite of inferior goods. So using this supermarket example, normal goods are goods whose demand increases as our income increases. So using the same supermarket example, if you go to Tesco and if you have, or rather if you enjoy an increase in income, the goods that we purchase that are non-Tesco branded would be the normal good. And all of these also contribute to overall demand for certain goods. So this is the key idea I wanted to communicate with regards to income as a non-price determinant. So to really emphasize what the bottom line is in this context, how do non-price determinants even differ from what we've learned earlier about movements along the curve? The bottom line is that changes in non-price determinants result or cause a change in the overall demand of a good. It no longer changes the quantity of the good demanded, as we have seen in previous examples, but it changes the overall demand of the good, regardless of the good's price level. So coming back to our taste and preferences example, for cake, now the overall demand for cake changes regardless of whether the slice of cake is priced at $10 or $5 in a shop. So this pretty much concludes our sharing about changes in price influencing quantity demanded and changes in non-price determinants influencing overall demand. Please take note of the difference and please take note of how they are reflected in the diagrams. Changes in price are reflected in the movement along the demand curve as we see over here. when there's a movement from point A to point B. But changes in non-price determinants will be reflected as a shift in the overall demand curve. So the overall demand can decrease, which is reflected as a leftward shift of the demand curve from D1 to D2, as you see over here, or a rightward shift of the demand curve from D1 to D3, as you see over here. So hopefully this very simple example helps to simplify your understanding of what demand, the law of demand, and price or non-price determinants are for this topic.